All right, should be live now. If you just go to the page, you should be able to see
Try
that.
refreshing it. Oh, sweet.
You see it?
Yep.
Yes, sir. So let me. Then you just gotta share it. Should.
Okay, how am I doing that? Let's see. Oh, there it is. Oh, sweet.
It hears you.
Yep.
And then
You just gotta share it.
should.
Okay, how?
And then make sure you mute your side.
Yep. Yeah, I just did that right now.
All right. Let me just make sure I'm good, and we'll go from there.
And I'm gonna see, make sure I shared it actually.
Yeah. So just go back to your page and just make sure you shared it.
Yep. Yep. I think we're good.
Okay. Let me see. Let me see. Live now. If you. All right. Keep this open. Okay. Let me just double check all the sounds good.
Dude, this is cool.
You like that?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man. Once you do this, you're gonna be like, oh man, I could do this. I always tell people once you go live, like it's just easier because you don't have to worry about editing it, and because I feel like once you watch it back, you always have like the remorse, the buyer's remorse or buyer's regret. But if it's live, I mean, whatever, you're stuck. Whatever. And that's pretty much what up. Rachel said, "What's up, Rachel?" I just want to say shout out to Rachel because you always support us. Man, I love you. You're the greatest. Thank you so much. I will drink to Rachel for sure. Let me. Well, Aadeel, while we're off camera, I already finished my first glass, so I'm gonna have to text my wife to see if we can get another one. Oh man, I was not prepared for this. So if before I do the formal intro, a lot of people, the reason I said, my little intro, I said, people know you as the Goku to my Vegeta story. I'm not sure if you know what the reference is.
Me? Dragon Ball Z, obviously.
Yeah, but do you know what I'm referencing though? Why you're Goku, why I'm Vegeta?
Oh no, I think you're gonna have to explain this one.
Well, I mean, you already know. I think you just want to hear me say it, but I'll just say that I was groomed and ready to be crowned Mr. Saber 2004, but I let my ego, I let my pride get the better of me, and I pretty much just disregarded you. I didn't think you would be a threat. I saw who was in the competition. See, that's the thing. I don't even remember who was in it, but I just know that I did not think you were a threat. And lo and behold, you came up on the stage as Double A and killed it, along with my hopes and dreams of securing the prestigious Mr. Saber 2004. And till this day, I have nightmares about it. I was like, I tell people, I told them to do that song.
That's right. You were the one who introduced me to Black Alicious and Alphabet Aerobics.
One who gave you the ammunition to shoot me in the head. I gave you the fuel to the fire that killed me. That I just know when I was like, in my head, I was like, all right, he's gonna do okay. But then when I saw the crowd reaction, because we're in the back watching each other,
yeah,
I was mad as hell. The crowd was so happy. Like I was the biggest hater. I was literally looking out. I'm like, it wasn't that good. It wasn't that good. Like I could barely understand him. It wasn't that good.
Oh man,
did I go first? I think I went before you. I'm pretty sure I went before you. So I think
I don't know. I remember you did MC Hammer.
Yeah,
you did Can't Touch This.
Yeah,
and you guys had just come back from like a volleyball match that you guys had lost, and it was just like, oh, that sucks. And
all right, we didn't have to say all that part, but what I will say is that I just remember just like my face going white, my stomach just feeling empty. I was just like, damn. I was telling everybody and their mama that I was gonna win it because I literally choreographed the group dance. I made it so I was the star of it. I don't even know how I didn't win. I was so mad. Even Blake was a judge. I was like, Blake, how did you not rig this for me?
I
I was mad as
remember
hell.
that because it was like four of the members of High Five, like your boy band, were in that were contestants in the Mr. Saber contest, and then Blake, the fifth member, was the judge, and I was like, oh hell no.
I was mad as hell, man. There was no way. There was no way. Whatever, man. That's that. I just want to say I'm over it now. Actually, I take it back. I'm not over it. I'm still mad at your ass. I'm still mad at. I'm still mad at you. But whatever. But let's go ahead and just jump right into it before I get mad and just finish my drink because I'm mad as hell. I know you don't drink, but customary for the show, I usually raise a glass to my guests. I appreciate you for coming on the show short notice. It's not easy to go live, and like I said, it's one of those things where you just got to go out there and do it. So I knew you were gonna wear the AA red, so I got the red wine here, sangria mix, and I got the gold in the background because I'm represent Streamwood. Represent. So for all the people that's watching, you already know Aadeel probably, or if you're just my friend, you don't know who he is. He's actually my good friend from high school. We were probably in all the smart classes together, and he gave me all the answers, or pretty much at least steered me the right way. I was in his group for every project, and I took credit for everything he did. But I would like to say thank you very much, sir, my good friend. I appreciate you. I love you. CEO and founder of PSYONIC, whatever. We know all that, but just want to say you're doing great things, and that's why I had to have you on the show. And if I didn't have this show, I wouldn't have caught up with you. That's why I think it's important that we do stuff like this. Reach out, build a network for everyone watching out there. Go live, do your own podcast, whatever. This is basically about small business. As you can tell, like Aadeel is in a research development, advanced prosthetic limbs, the affordable for people around the world. That was probably a terrible intro, but that's how I break it down. But besides all that,
that's pretty accurate.
At the end of the day, I just want to see your thoughts of how you can bring all the principles that you took into your project and how it relates to small business. I have this theory that, on every level of business, it's all the same. No matter how you wrap it up, look at a different angle, it all makes the same. So you tell me your story, and I'll tell you how it relates to mine, all the issues that I run into, and then we go from there. So hopefully, everyone, you guys learn something. Me and Aadeel will probably sprinkle some memories in there, but at the same time, let's just catch up and have fun. How's that feel, Aadeel?
Dude, love it. This feels like high school. This feels like back when I was in your basement, and we were just rapping, to instrumentals that you had. I feel like that was the last time I saw you. That's what we were doing.
See, people. I tell people we did that, and people don't believe me, but we actually did that. I don't. We actually did that. Those stupid high school movies that you watch at the movie theaters or whatever. We were a pretty stereotypical American high school, and I love that. I love that. But anyways, I know I introduced you, but Aadeel, can you just go ahead and introduce yourself just a little bit for everyone watching? 10 of us, 9 of us. What's up, guys?
Yay! So I'm Aadeel Akhtar. I'm CEO and founder of a company called PSYONIC. Like Jay said, I've known Jay since high school, and building bionic limbs is actually something I wanted to do my whole life, ever since I was 7. My parents are from Pakistan. I was visiting. That's the first time I met someone who was missing a limb, and she was missing her right leg and using a tree branch as a crutch. That's what inspired me to want to go into this field. And then, so I went to Loyola for undergrad, got a bachelor's in biology there, a master's in computer science, worked for a couple of years, and then came down to the University of Illinois. And I've been here for I guess, last 10 years now. So, man, time flies. While I was doing my PhD here, I started up PSYONIC, and we are building advanced bionic limbs that are accessible and affordable to everyone. And even with me here, I've got our ability hand, which is our latest bionic hand that's available on the market, FDA registered and everything. And I'm excited to talk about our journey to get there.
Perfect. So the pretty much why I thought you would be a great guest is because when people start a business, it's usually founded or at least circled about like one specialty item, or project. I usually tell people that when you start a business, there should be a signature service or signature product, and behind that, there's got to be a lot of research, development, trial and error that goes behind it. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with your trial and error, how you designed it, where the idea came from?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, so I never intended to start a business. That was never the plan.
Right.
Originally, like I always wanted to become a doctor, right? And like every like South Asian kid, right? Like you're want you to become a doctor as well, right? So when I went to Loyola, I was pre-med. And then it was like in undergrad, I took my first like computer science class, and I absolutely loved it. And I realized that if I just become a straight up MD, I don't get to do any of the cool stuff that I learned in like my engineering and CS classes. And I wanted to figure out a way to like combine that stuff, right? So right down the street in downtown Chicago, there was a hospital called the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. It's now known as the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. And they are the #1 rehabilitation hospital in the US for the last 30 years. And they made some like crazy breakthroughs in mind-controlled bionic limbs. Like they had patients who like they would just think about bending their elbow or like making a pinch, and their like $100,000 bionic hand would just like respond to what their brain was telling it to do. And it was just, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do, right? So when I went down to U of I and we started doing research, U of I, University of Illinois, didn't have prosthetics research at the time. And the thing is that like we established like a collaboration with the Rehab Institute of Chicago, but it's like 2.5 hours north of here, right? And like if we got to play with the expensive toys, like we only get to play with them for like half an hour a week, and if we broke them, that would be even worse, right? Like there's like $100,000 like bionic arm that you just broke off or crap, right? And so we were like, we're engineers at the University of Illinois. It's one of the best like engineering schools in the world. Why don't we start just building our own prosthetic hand? And so over the last 9 years, we've gone through over the last 5 years, we've gone through 9 prototypes. And like the very first one we made, I mean, this was like, it was based off of a humanoid robot that you could print, 3D print for like $1,000 online. And I mean, so this thing looks kind of like a skeleton almost. It's called like an in-move humanoid robot. And like, but we'd never built an arm before. So we were like, okay, this is a great place to start. This open source community, they've got like all this stuff that we can 3D print. We'll put this hand together and then we'll hook up muscle sensors to our arm and then control this thing, right? And so we did that. So that was like, cool. All right. We built this like hand, like what's next? And we got the chance to, or there like around this time, it was like maybe April of like 2014, like spring of 2014. There was a guy named David Krupa. He is the founder of a nonprofit called the Range of Motion Project. They're based out of the US, Guatemala, and Ecuador. They're all about making prosthetic limbs affordable for people who can't afford them, right? And it's because 80% of amputees are in developing nations. Less than 3% of them can afford rehabilitative care. So they have a nonprofit that addresses that. And so he was visiting campus because he's an alum of the University of Illinois. And so I was like, hey, dude, this is like exactly what I want to do. I want to make advanced bionic limbs and get them to people who can't afford them around the world. And he was able to get the US Embassy to sponsor me and a graduate student who was working with me to go down there and try out one of our like really crappy 3D printed hands on a patient, like using like their muscles to control this and all these different grasps. And it was just like, holy crap, what an amazing opportunity. But we didn't have like anything close to that level at all.
You were not ready.
No, not even close to ready, right? And so we were that summer, like we built like an entirely new version of the hand where like we had to move like all the electronics and motors from like this giant forearm into the hand itself. And you have to imagine this hand was like 3 times the size of a normal human hand, had wires going everywhere, plugged into like breadboards, plugged into like 2 MacBooks, the power supply, the wall, and everything, right? And this thing like didn't even work, right? So like the day before we flew down to Ecuador, we didn't even have anything working, but we were like, we're going to be in Ecuador for 2 weeks. We can figure it out when we get there, right? We have all the pieces, and we'll do that. So we flew down to Ecuador. Dave picks us up from the airport. First thing he tells us, tomorrow, the U.S. Embassy wants to meet you guys, and they want to see everything working. And we were just like, oh my goodness, right? So that's basically like 2 weeks of all-nighters trying to like get this hand to work. Like we went immediately to the hotel room. Like I got the hand to a point where if I like squeezed my wrist really, really, really hard, I could like barely get this hand to close. And if I like extended my wrist really, 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 really hard, I could like barely get this hand to like open. And it's supposed to like, make a pinch and like a key grasp.
Fairly easy to move.
Yeah, right. It should be really easy to move and like respond to all of my like hand movements. But we're just like, okay, we're gonna have to like live with this, right? So we go to see the U.S. Embassy, and they, we show them this demo. And they're just floored because they've never seen a robot in their lives before, right? They don't know that it's supposed to work so easily. They just see like, oh my goodness, he got something to move with his muscles. This is amazing. Okay, so next week when you do this on a patient, we're thinking like 2 newspapers, 3 news crews are going to come and cover this event, right? And we're just like, oh, dang, like the bar is set like super high now. We've never done this on someone who's missing a hand before, and it's like barely working on me, right? And then they started asking us questions like, oh, where are you guys from? And we're like, oh, yeah, we're from the University of Illinois. And they're like, you're from the University of Illinois. In that case, we're bumping you up to all the international media stations. Because it turns out that at the time, the president of Ecuador was an alum of the University of Illinois. And any chance that the president of Ecuador got to promote the university, they took it. So it was just like, okay, now the bar is set really, really, really high, right? And so fast forward to the next week, we still didn't have everything working, right? It was just the following week that the media was coming was like 6 a.m. that day. I had been up for about 32 hours straight, and so was Mary, the other graduate student who was working on this with me. And we still hadn't figured out what was wrong with this. And Dave said he was going to pick us up at 6. It's 6 a.m. I'm looking through like hundreds of lines of code. Mary's looking through this giant mess of a wiry breadboard. And like at 6:08, I noticed that like there's something weird in the code. And I just send like Dave a text. It's like, I think I might have found something. I just need a couple more minutes. And he's like, okay. And it turns out there was like one line of code where 2 variables were like switched on the opposite side of an equal sign. As soon as I switched those 2 things, everything started working. And I was just like, holy crap, if he came to pick us up on time, like we would have never figured that out. Yeah. So we were lucky. We were lucky that he was late. And we were just like, whew, okay. So like when I was making a pinch, the hand made a pinch and everything was great. We were thinking Juan's going to get there, our patient Juan is going to get there at like 8 a.m. Media's going to get there at 9 a.m. Like we'll hook everything up. It's going to run smoothly. Media's going to love this thing, right? 9 a.m. rolls around. All the media is there and Juan's not there yet. He doesn't get there until 10. So like all the news stations are like super annoyed at this point, right? They're like, we've been waiting around and now we've only got one shot in front of like all these news stations, international news stations to get this right. And so we hook Juan up to the device and first thing we do is we try to read his muscle signals. So the way this hand works is that like he tried to make it like a pinch or a fist with his like muscles, right? And that'll control the hand. And we weren't reading any muscle signals at all. And it was just like, oh my goodness, what else could go wrong at this point, right? So like Mary and I, we go into debug mode. Juan and Dave are like stalling with the media, telling the backstory of the range of motion project and how he lost his hand to buy us enough time to like fix this disaster of a hand, right? And like we noticed that the voltage is like weird, and so we saw that like the 9-volt batteries that were powering this thing, like one of them had like puffed up to about double in size and was like burning hot to the touch. And had we not noticed it at that point, we might have been on the news for like a different reason, right? Like a battery explosion. Yeah, right, exactly. Fortunately, I had another battery in my pocket and I hooked it up properly, and then all the muscle signals came on. I was like, okay, whew. Crisis averted, right? It's one thing for us to read his muscle signals. It's another thing for like our machine learning algorithms to work and like the robotic hand to respond to his actual muscle movements, right? And so the way this works, right? When you turn the hand on, the hand will go through like different movements. It'll like make a pinch, and then you're supposed to like mimic that movement for like 15 seconds, or you make a fist, or the hand will make a fist, and you mimic that movement,
Right.
and then the like onboard computer will like learn all those different signals associated with those different hand movements that you're trying to make. And so you go through this for like 2 minutes, and the hand opens up, and you ask the patient to close it. So he goes through this. I ask him to close it. Nothing happens, and I'm just like, dude, what else could go wrong at this point, right? And this is completely serendipitous, right? So I'm Muslim. I've been Muslim my entire life, right? And the patient that we were working with, out of like all people, Juan was the leader of all the Muslims in Ecuador. And there's like only a handful of Muslims in Ecuador. It's like a 99.9% Catholic country, right? And I just happened to be working with the leader of all the Muslims. And so like, we didn't know that when, like until we had met. And so he turns to me and he was like, Bismillah, say Bismillah. And so Bismillah just means in the name of God, right? It's something that Muslims say before they do anything, right? So I'm like, Bismillah, okay, Bismillah. And so I reset like the onboard computer. The training procedure starts all over again. I ask Juan to like go through all the movements. The hand opens up. I ask him to close it, and the hand responds. And the media comes just like rushing around the table. And I take a step back. I'm thinking in my head, Juan, you are a man of God. And so one of the things, and this was captured on one of like the news stations, is that he hadn't been able to make a pinch with his left hand in 35 years. In fact, he had forgotten how to make a pinch with his left hand in 35 years. And we had to retrain his brain in order to remember how to do it. We put like a mirror in front of his like amputated limb and reflected his like intact one, and it tricked his brain into thinking like that his amputated hand was still there. And he literally said that he felt as though a part of him had come back. And it was in that moment that it was just like, you know, if I go the straight up like MD route and like end up becoming like a university professor or something like that, then this just ends up in like a journal paper, a university project. The only way we could make everyone feel the same way that Juan did was to start a company. And so that's when PSYONIC was born, and that's when we started commercializing the technology.
See, that's crazy, because just telling that story, like two major points like come to my head, and I feel like people that start business, or you know, that even just following a hobby, they're usually right at the brink of success. It's just sometimes the people that don't succeed is because they just give up right when they're right there. Like if you would have gave up and be like, you know what, let's just turn this to a vacation, fuck it, whatever. Like we're here, let's just go chill the sun. But you guys literally just like ran through the door and be like, yo, we're just gonna run the whole day out and just try to get it done. And that's usually what separates the successful business people from the people that just give up. And I think another thing too that's really important is like a lot of people, they don't realize that their level of their perceived, like let's say you were around the group and they're like so amazed that the robot was moving, but really that's what it's supposed to do. As creators of of developers or engineers or whatever, our perceived level of like genius or how we critique ourselves isn't the same way that's perceived by our customers or the people around us. So for us, we're like, oh, that's not much of a big deal. To them, it's like, oh my god, front page news, crazy. And then I feel like once you just kind of reroute back the perspective as your audience, like you'll kind of remember what you're doing it for, and that'll give you that push, because it sounds like that's what ultimately drove you to run the business or make it a business, because you saw how that person felt and you wanted to give that to everyone else. Can you talk
Absolutely.
a little bit about the statistics as far as like the amount of people that this actually affects, or how many people it could possibly help improve their quality of life?
Yeah. And so worldwide, there's about like 10 million people, like around 10 million people with hand amputations. And so that's like, it's huge. And like I said, like they can't usually afford like a bionic hand, right? And they typically have something like a hook, right? This is like technology that hasn't changed since like the Civil War era of the United States, right? Like,
Right.
Like the two steel like pincers, like Captain Hook style, with the bicycle cable that attaches to your shoulders, right? And so yeah, like we in the US, there's like maybe like 100K, like 100,000 people with hand amputations and like and more severe. And finger amputations, there's like 10 times as many as that, right? And even in the US, it's been like really challenging for insurers to cover these prosthetic hands because they're just so expensive. And so what kind of one of the things that drove us like the entire time was that we wanted to make sure that we could hit a price point that Medicare would cover. And if Medicare is like the gold standard of insurances, like if Medicare covers it, then like everyone else will, like your Blue Cross Blue Shield, your Aetna, your like workers comp, your VA, like they all follow what Medicare does, right? So we wanted to make sure that Medicare was our goal, right? And we were able to hit that. And so it's like we've expanded access in the US from like 10% of the population who can afford this to like 75%. Of the population, and that's one of the things that we wanted to do.
Yeah, and a quick little background. I actually used to work for a therapy company, and one of the main things that you'll know from working with insurances and Medicare is that usually Medicare they do set the bar, but they also focus what they do for reimbursement as the lowest common denominator as far as getting them functional. So when they see a hook, like, oh, what's the function they're trying to do? They're just trying to pick up a bag. Well, you don't need all 5 fingers to pick up a bag. Like you literally just need one little hook and lift it up. So can you talk about how the actual pricing and making it getting affordable, it was so important to your mission as far as making it affordable for people around the world, and how you applied that to the design of it?
Yeah. And so, it was interesting on that front too, because the thing is that like a lot of our research was never funded while I was a grad student. No. And so because of that, like we had to bootstrap a lot of this stuff, right? So we would there were
selling
like classes
CDs at your trunk, Aadeel. Selling mixtapes. What are you doing?
I was freestyling on campus, it was like my hat out there, just trying to get money to build these bionic limbs.
At the quad. What are you doing out there, Aadeel? Get back inside. Go do this research.
And so like we would have students who would like take these like specific courses that would like give them like access to like $500, and that like $500 we would stretch that across like a year. That was like a year's like budget that we could like build these bionic hands with or something, right? And so the interesting thing about that was that it forced us to think in a completely different way. And the traditional way that you approach these things is that like you like use the most expensive manufacturing, like injection molding, custom machine steel, and all of this stuff, and then you like build this like tank of a hand or whatever, right? And then the complete opposite spectrum was like you build these like 3D printed prosthetics that are like really fragile and clumsy and but really cheap, right?
Right.
And when we first started, we were like 3D printing all of these prosthetic hands, and we were like, oh, this is great. Like we can make these prosthetic hands for like, $50, and then they're like, we're going to like completely destroy the market. Right. And then we started like taking some courses through the school's like business, programs or whatever. Right. And one of the things that they suggested, or one of the programs that they do is something called iCore. And you go through the lean startup methodology,
right.
And in lean startup, this like Steve Blank, Silicon Valley, all like their methodology for building startups, but they're big on what they call customer discovery. So you call up like 100 potential customers and you figure out what their pain points are, right? You don't tell them anything about what you're building or anything that because you don't want to bias them. You want to know like what exactly is the problem with the current products that are out there, right?
As far as like prosthesis and like.
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
yeah. As far as so we're talking to like hand amputees. We're talking to the clinicians that like make or like fit the hands on them, right? And the number one thing across every single of these like hundreds of patients and clinicians was that their $50,000 to $100,000 bionic hand was breaking. Not because they did anything crazy with it, but they accidentally hit it against a table and it just broke, right?
Right.
And that's when we realized, well, crap. If we make a 3D printed hand, like that thing is going to break within minutes of anyone using it, right? And so we were like, how can we leverage 3D printing and like these low cost manufacturing methods, but still make these hands more robust than any other prosthetic that's out there. And so we started like looking into all these researchers doing like robotics and all that stuff. And there's like a subset of that of these robotics researchers who are looking into something called soft robotics. So these are robots that are made out of like silicone and rubber, right? They're kind of like your own skin, like your own flesh. Your own flesh isn't like, you know, these rigid like
real
plastic.
creepy stuff. Got it.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so what we started to do is we started to 3D print molds, and then we would use low cost silicone and rubber to like make these like super impact resistant fingers. And so with the ability hand that I've got here, right? So these fingers, they're flexible, right? They're made out of like silicone and rubber, and I can like smash this thing. It survives the impact. Like we had a patient do push-ups on it. We've like brought it to a martial arts studio, broken boards with it. It's super resistant to impacts. And we wouldn't have like come up with that had we not done this like customer discovery process, or had been forced to think in this way of like, we don't have any money, like how can we build something with no money at all that's better than everything else?
And I think that's an important point too, because a lot of people that are not familiar with like how people perceive business is like there's this saying that you should never base your business around low costs. Because you'll always be beat by someone down the road. Like there's someone will just come around that's a little bit cheaper. So can you talk a little bit about how your original idea kind of evolved over the years? Because that's one of the main things that changed, right? Because you're like, oh, I'll make cheap, easy to make stuff, and we'll sell millions. But really, you really got to focus on the durability. Was there anything else that changed? Was there like team members that changed? Was there like vision, mission statement?
You know, it has always been a driving thing that we wanted to make sure that this hand was going to be affordable, right? So it was like, and I mean, there had been like so many moments where like we could have just been like, screw it, let's make a $50,000 like hand, and like
let's get a little bit of return on this.
Yeah, right.
Put a nice new lab for the school.
Like, and the thing is though, is that like, then I feel like that would, the entire reason why I got into this in the first place was to make sure that it would be accessible, right? If we killed that part of it, I would feel like I've killed a part of myself. And so I needed to make sure that like whatever we were doing, that was one of the values that we'd never lose, that we make these hands like accessible to people who can't afford them. And so it definitely was hard, right? And it definitely like we can't do particular manufacturing methods because like the volumes we're talking about, they're not like, you know, iPhone level volumes. They're not like right. We're not making like tens of millions of these, right? So injection molding is not a good option because the costs for that are too high. But going back to like what I was saying earlier, right? Because we were thinking in that way, it forced us to like come up with like these creative new ideas that are novel manufacturing methods to this particular field, like this like 3D printing a mold and like using silicone rubber, right? The nice thing about like that method is that it was really conducive to us putting like pressure sensors in the fingers. So this is like the first hand on the market that gives sensory feedback to users. So one of our patients, he's a U.S. Army sergeant, lost his hand in Iraq in 2005 due to a roadside bomb, and he used a hook on a daily basis. And when he wears an ability hand, he can actually like feel his daughter's hand when he holds it, and that's something that like you can't get from a hook, and you can't get from any other prosthetic that's on the market. And for the fact that like, you know, his insurance completely covers that as well. I mean, that's just like, that is exactly why we're doing this.
Right, and I think that's a very important part too, because like as teams evolve, as you know, your product changes, it's really important to stay true what your original statement, your mission statement was. Like you knew you wanted to make it affordable for everyone. That didn't deter you from the type of products or materials that you used. If in fact it actually helped you streamline it. So I think that's something that people lose sight of once they grow. Because you said you started as a university project. Now you're FDA, you know, registered and everything like that. You know, I'm I'm not sure how it works in your industry. Like, were there people telling you, "Oh, you should do it this way. You should do it this way." Maybe we should put like a nice Nike symbol on it. We'll put it on a couple of athletes type of, honestly, like there's got to be different people, because when people see like a nice check or a nice offer, they're like, oh, you know what, maybe we can change a couple things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, dude,
Or any situation if that happened?
I would say the majority of my job is taking in like probably 10 different opinions on every single aspect of this hand, like not even just like the engineering side, but also like the sales side, the marketing side, then like the business side, the partnership side, and and filtering all of that down, and then like coming up with the best solution based on like 10 completely different opinions, and with each one's, and they're like mutually exclusive, right? Like one is like the complete 360 from another one, right?
Because they're all coming from different perspectives, right?
Exactly. Exactly, right? And so I mean, for example, like one of them was like, we were talking with the clinicians, and they were like, they were saying that if you're going to build a hand, like build it like a tank, right? So like if we went like specifically with that route, it would have been like, this hand would have been like 3 times the size it is now, but it would be like super, like it would be like super heavy but super strong and robust, right?
Like
but instead of making it like super rigid and robust that way, we went like in an opposite direction, where we make it soft and compliant, like flowing like water, instead of like being like hard like a rock, right? And it was, so we took like the sentiment of, yes, we need to make it robust, but instead of just like following that advice directly and just using like these expensive manufacturing methods to make it like super like solid and rigid, we looked at these other alternative methods, and we made these like low cost silicones that had an even better effect, and were able to make it at a much cheaper price point.
Yeah. So I asked you this before we got on the chat too, because I was very interested in how you grew, and like the amount of time it took you to get from their university project to where you are now. Can you talk about, I always think it's funny, can you talk about what the process of adding important team members, like being the original founder, like how do you recruit team members? Like how did you hire people? I know your wife is part of the team. Like, did she just say, "Hey, I'm on it. Like, I'm gonna balance you. You need someone that's gonna, supplement like your personality." Like, how did you go about choosing your team, and what was important as far as what you used to kind of sift through the people out there?
Yeah. Actually, we have a pretty selective process on who we bring on, and usually it's through recommendations from people we already have in the company. And because we're in a university setting, they usually have friends, and because we already know and trust them, and they do an awesome job, we know that they're going to be recommending someone who's also really good. But like specifically, like if we're hiring engineers, for example, right? We've come to learn like what the litmus test, like what the things that we know, that if they say this thing, or if they know how to do this particular thing, then we know that they're going to know how to do everything else. And
Right.
So, for example, an electrical engineer, we usually ask the question if they've ever done surface mount soldering, right? So this is like where you take those
simple,
like,
right,
green printed circuit boards, and it's like if you grew up in like Shenzhen, China, you like grow up knowing how to do this, right? This is something like you learn as a skill as a kid there, right? But in the US, you don't necessarily like have that particular skill. And the thing is that if you even know what I'm talking about, then usually that's like a green light to us. Like, okay, if he's done this before, then we know that he can like design circuits. We know that he can program these chips. We know that he can like put together like all the electronics that we need inside of a hand, just by that like one question. And we found that out through experience, right? So like when we like interviewed like tons of students who were interested in like building bionic limbs, the ones that worked out the best were the ones who knew how to do this particular skill. On the mechanical engineering side, what was it? So we had like a test that we would give them, where we would 3D print like a real looking hand, like your own hand, for example. And then we would tell them to just design this on their computer. like open like your CAD software, like just make this hand. You've got a week to do it. And there's like particular techniques, especially like, you know, with these like crazy curves that you have like in your own hand. If you can do that well, we know that you would be able to like CAD anything that we need to do. You know how to like 3D print it, you know how to manufacture it, all of that stuff. And so
did you
it was
like an interview. You just threw stuff at him, like, "Hey, design this."
no, that was like the interview. That was like literally it. It was like, hey, what's your experience? Okay, here's a 3D printed hand. Take it home, give it to her, and send us the files in a week of how you would CAD this up. Yep, yeah.
So like if I was just from the outsider looking in, like say I saw a project similar to yours, or if it was yours, it doesn't necessarily have to be yours. Like how do I go about saying, "Hey, I want to be on the team. You guys look like you're doing something cool. Can you put me on? Can I be the hype man? How do I sign up?"
Yeah, I mean, so most of our, because we're located on the University of Illinois campus, right? We're in the school's incubator. I mean, like usually like the engineering programs know about us really well, and so the university likes to advertise like you know, Psionic, we're building bionic hands a lot. So we are constantly getting emails from like students who are really interested in joining in. And like I think in the last couple of weeks I've got like 3 or 4 emails from students who are like, how can I build this? I mean, and I wish I would have loved to have an opportunity as an undergrad student to build a bionic hand, right? Like I would have killed for something like that. And so the fact that, you know, that is an opportunity that's available to these students, I think it's just it's just I wish I could have had that.
So if you were to, let's say I am that student that has the dream of building bionic arm, not even a bionic arm, or like something as far as like that monumental as far as, you know, developing a product or have an idea. How do I get that in motion? Like if I were at your school or any other school, what are there any tips of how I would go about that, or where do you even start?
Start in terms of what, in like starting a new venture, or like yeah, I mean at some level it's I mean, you just kind of like do it, right?
So is it like a project you're assigned and you like make a thesis and you're like, you present it to someone, "Hey, will you fund it?" How does that work?
So okay, I mean, we like held off on getting like angel investing and venture capital funding for like as long as we could, because we wanted
that a
to
conscious decision. You're just
that was indeed a conscious decision, right? And the reason for that is that if you don't need to take VC funding, then like that you want to push that off as much as possible, because
you're afraid of what they're going to tell you to do or what they want.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And if it's too early on, then they get a larger slice, right? And they have much more influence, and your valuation is going to be a lot lower, right?
It's
so
like
the longer exactly, right? Yeah. Like the further off you can push that, then, and the more traction that you gain before you do that, then it just like it just works out in your favor, right? And you'll also be more attractive to them, because then you've already like de-risked a lot of the investment for them if you like can keep going beyond a certain point, right? So we like currently we're like half funded from like grants and like half funded from like angel investors and VC funding. And I mean, and that's been hard, right? It's been hard to like kind of like get on like over the years. It's been hard to like get a lot of the funding as well, because like, you know, this is my first venture, right? I was learning a lot of this stuff. I do not have a business background.
There wasn't
right?
a podcast about it.
there wasn't a podcast about it, right? but now there is. That's right. J everything, teaching everyone how to start up these businesses, and so like just to give you an idea of like how much of a roller coaster this was, right? Summer of 2017, like we had won our like school's business plan competition, so we had like 25K in funds. That was like, you know, 5 to 10 times more money than we had ever had, like to build any of these bionic hands. With like $25,000, it was like we were working on like $500 budgets before then, right? So
but
we used that
these
money.
competitions are actually common for these type of schools, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So they usually have them at most universities, I would say. So University of Illinois has like a business plan competition. So we won that in 2015. And we used those funds to go to China in 2017. So it was like me, my wife was like 6 months pregnant at the time. We had like our 1.5-year-old son who's now 4. Who's now 5. He just turned 5 like a couple weeks ago. And like we had 3 of our engineers all living like in a small apartment in a high rise in Shenzhen, China for like 2 months or 2.5 months. It was nuts. Absolutely nuts, right? And only one of us spoke the language. So we were navigating China all off of like one of my undergraduate students who like who is native to China. And so that summer we were trying to do an Indiegogo campaign, and we wanted to raise like, like 150K on this Indiegogo campaign. And we raised like $6,000, and it was completely tanked. And so
Damn.
like
a little off.
Yeah. I mean, like 2 orders of magnitude off, right? And so like at the end of that year, we had like $200 left in our bank account, right? And I had to make a decision at that point of like, am I going to finish med school, or am I going to go like all in, right? And we had applied for a grant from the National Science Foundation for $225,000 that we had been like rejected for already. And so like we were placing everything was like betting on that grant coming in. December 31st, 2017, $200 in the bank account. January 1st, we got the grant, $200,200 in our bank account. It was just like,
you're right.
Oh my
you're
goodness.
always on the brink of success. It's the people that give up way too soon. They never get to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Oh man, yeah, and it's always like a roller coaster like that, right? And so it's like the highs are high, right, and then the lows are like super low. It's never, and it always like averages to somewhere like in between. It's never like it's all good all the time, right?
I'm just gonna. I don't want to cut you off, but let me just ask one last question because we are near the time limit for the Zoom call. Can you talk a little bit about the terrible failure that Indiegogo campaign was? Because I feel like a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'll get it crowdfunded, I'll do that group fund me type business, but at the end of the day you really just gotta go out there and do it yourself. The door knocking, go around researching, word of mouth, that's really where it is. Can you talk a little about how bad that was in that experience?
Yeah,
and why you thought that was going to work in the first place?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we thought that was going to work was because we saw examples of other companies that have like had these like social enterprises that were like crowdfunded, right? And we were like, well, we're a social enterprise, we can do the same thing, right? And one of the things that's crowdfunding works really well if you're like a consumer product, right?
Right.
And this isn't, right? This is like a medical device that has to be prescribed by a physician and then like reimbursed through insurance that goes to a particular individual, right? It's not the same as like headphones or like
right.
an iPod.
Like one of the things is you're one of the first investors. You get 2 hands for you buy one,
exactly.
2 hands for free.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like like Kickstarter.
Right,
what am I going to do with the prosthetic hand? Right. Exactly. Right. And so because of that, like honestly, I'm surprised we even got 6K from that Indiegogo.
It's all from like your brothers and your parents.
It was all from friends and family. It was like literally all from friends and family.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest reasons why like it wasn't like necessarily the right platform for what we were trying to do, right?
Yeah, you kind of got to know where your market is and kind of know how to talk to them, because I don't think I've ever saw Indiegogo like robot hands. I never was like, oh, you know what? I think I could go for 3. Yeah, maybe I'll get some for the friends, get some for the group. Nice stocking stuffers. I don't think I ever said that.
And I mean, I guess it would have been it was kind of more like if you donate this much, then this much goes towards like a hand that someone could get. Right. And at some level we kind of still want to like we don't want to like skirt that model entirely, right? Because 25% of like people with amputation still can't afford it in the US, right? We expanded that access to 75%. And so one of the things that we're looking into is like, you know, can we set up a nonprofit with the organization that accepts donations to like help people who can't afford them, and then we cover everyone that way. And that's next year, man. It's all going to happen.
Year? That's a goal.
Yeah.
That's your goal. Fire and money. Money's new for the people watching. All right, bro. I just we're gonna have to wrap it up. We're gonna have to make a part 2. I just want to say sorry for cutting you off so bad.
No problem, man.
A little bit longer than I expected, but I just want to say
my bad.
It's all good. Cheers to you, my friend. We'll
Thanks,
figure out
man.
another topic. There's not even anything in here. I'm just gonna eat all these mangoes in your honor. Just want to say nice catching up to you, my friend. I expect to hear and see more good things for you to come. I'm gonna hold you accountable. You said next year I want to see some big things too. Cheers, bro.
Awesome, man.
Thanks for coming, man.
Absolutely.
Right, shout out to everyone that's watching. Tell them where they can find you, bro.
Oh,
you, Aadeel, they know where they can find me.
Yeah, so psionic.io is our website, and you can find us on all social media at Psionic Inc. Inc. And yeah, that's our handle.
And you won't find them on Indiegogo. That's a new one too for the people watching. All right, bro. Thanks everyone watching. Catch you next time. Say bye, Aadeel.
Yeah.